All right, this is Studio Review. So this Studio, we really just dove right into using controllers in Java. And so I have a bit of things set up initially just to kind of get things rolling. I'm going to collapse this. So we started off with this boilerplate code inside of skills tracker application, but I added the controllers package, and inside the controllers package we have our skills controller. Now in here I created a class called skills controller and just added some, for the most part, empty controllers for the various endpoints. So a quick review of what we have. We have a get mapping endpoint, and this is just going to take everything just at /, just when you go straight to localhost 8080, this is going to manage that. Here I have get mapping for /form. This is where our form will live. And then down here we have our post mapping. And so when our form makes a post request, this will manage what happens next. This will take that post data and then return something. So from here, I'm going to show something. So you asked a question about doing inline styles. I just had my syntax wrong. I was in React world in my head. So it is possible. So I was able to change it to red. So you can see inside the inspector, it was quotes. I use single quotes, quote, property, : value. So I had it different when I was trying to see if it was possible. All right, sorry for the diversion to everyone else. But yeah, it's possible. Cool, so we're gonna jump over to the directions and look at item number 1. At localhost 8080, add text that states the three possible programming languages someone could be working on. You'll need an H1 with the skills tracker, the title skills tracker, an H2, and an OL, an ordered list containing 3 programming languages of your choosing. I would imagine there's more than 3 possible programming languages someone could learn, so we're just gonna have to pick a few. This right here gives us what it needs to look like, all right? So I found that it is a bit challenging to write HTML in a Java string. I might not have been the only person that had that experience. It's kind of challenging to write HTML in a Java string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it inside of VS Code in a blank HTML file. And then when I have something that I like, then I'll figure out how to make it into a Java string. So we technically don't need the HTML in the body, so I'm going to keep it simple. So we need an H1, and my memory does not serve me well. It needs to have the title of skills tracker. And then we're going to have an ordered list, and an ordered list has line items. An H2 as well. I'm missing an H2. Oh, that's right. We have that whole sentence. We have a few skills we would like to learn. Here's the list. All right. So we can say Java, JavaScript, and then a third. I'm going to take this as a suggestion from anyone out here. What should be the third language we throw on here? Python. Okay, cool. Python's great. It's actually a really great language to learn because it's so versatile. If you were thinking about learning a third language at some point. Cool. So I'm going to save this, and I already have it opened in my browser. I just opened up the HTML file in my browser, And we can see that the proof is there. This looks like the HTML we want. Notice you can see the path. This is just a file on my desktop. I just opened up the index.html file. It shows up in my browser. So now that I trust the HTML, I'm going to open up IntelliJ and paste it in there. I don't need the new lines. I mean, not that they hurt anything, but it even gives me some better, like a bit of formatting. The browser's going to ignore these spaces, but that actually worked a lot easier than I expected it to. All right, cool. Let's refresh. Let's go to our IntelliJ app. This is not it. Localhost 8080. Refresh. All right, so there we go. We have our first bit. Our Java, JavaScript, Python. Cool. Nice. Let's jump back at the directions. The next thing we're going to do is a bit more challenging because we have to deal with a form and how forms work. You know, they're kind of confusing. Before I jump to number 2, any questions or comments before we press forward? No? All right, we'll keep moving. Right, so number 2. Add a form that lets the user enter their name and choose their favorite, second favorite, and third favorite programming languages on your list. Use select elements for each ranking. Select elements. Just as with the exercise, we'll use a get mapping, which I set up before we joined up here. I think to make my life easier, I'm just going to copy that bit of direction. Well, that was not easier. That's all right. So we know we need a form and a bunch of other stuff. So the first thing we need to do is have an input that lets the user enter their name. All right, so we need a label, name, or that could work too. Spaces, it will ignore it like that. And then I need an input. And so for a label, to associate a label with an input, not that it matters a whole lot right now, but I'm going to do for name, and then this input's name is name. All right, I could specify what type of input this is, because an input could be, you know, a calendar, it could be a radio button, it could be all kinds of things. But the default input that HTML gives us, I think is going to work. Let me just check on my. This is the one. I'm going to refresh. Yeah, so this looks like what the form's going to want. Okay, so the next thing we needed was a select. Let's see here. Because they need to enter their name. We have that. Choose their favorite, second favorite, and third favorite programming languages on the list. And we'll use select elements for each of the rankings. And so, select elements. All right, so let me just Google syntax for select elements. Okay, so we have something that is select is wrapping all of these things. Inside there we have options. And the options both have a value and then a text content. And so the way this will work is when we submit the form, the value gets submitted with the form, not the text content. So the value portion will be important. Zooming in did not help. All right. So select. And inside of here we have an option. Value equals, we had JavaScript and the same. And then we have Java, Java, Python, Python. Yeah, Python is used in all kinds of machine learning stuff, scientific stuff, but then it's also accessible to other things that are less scientific. All right, cool. Let's see what this first select looks like. We're probably going to want a label for it, but we'll just prove that we're making progress. Yep. And we could even put a blank option at the top so that nothing is selected by default. So there, now I can select something. And then I wonder if I could say something like this. I'm just guessing here on the syntax. Nah, it doesn't give me does not give me what I want. All right, that's fine. Cool. So enough of that diversion. We need a label for this. So we're going to give this a name, which is going to be first fave. Label is going to be for first favorite. And the label will be first favorite. Verify that my changes look good, although I forgot to save. Cool, so now we have first favorite, that's good. Gonna add a line break in there. And then I'm just gonna copy this and paste it, So now we have second favorite. And we'll also need to update the label, which I forgot to copy. Right, this is what I forgot to copy. Put it down here. Now we have third favorite. Cool. All right, so let's refresh. My break is in the wrong spot for my first favorite. It needs to be above the label. Cool. So now we have the ability to select your first favorite, second favorite, and third favorite. Cool. All right. So let's see here. We have a form. I'm going to go ahead and copy it and move it over to IntelliJ. Let's erase this, paste it. I'm not even going to worry about fixing all the new lines. I think this is going to work as is. They're just unnecessary. So in localhost, I'm going to go to /form. And there we have the form. It looks just like the HTML vanilla file we just created. And so I'm missing something. Missing the ability to submit the form. So I am going to add BR, that's a line break, keeps everything from being on the same line. Then I'm going to do an input type equals submit. It's a self-closing elements. Let me see if that works well. Wrong one. There we go. So I can hit submit, and then it does stuff. Cool. You notice it generated a query string. Actually, kind of want to point that out because it's kind of relevant. So if I press submit, we have question mark indicating we have a query string, and then we have key value. An and symbol means we have another key value, and key value, key value. So once you kind of get used to that whole key value structure of query strings, you can read them and even sometimes edit them. Not that a hacker would ever think to do that. But anyways, so we have our submit. Let's go ahead and select all of this and move it over into IntelliJ. And instead of editing this, I'm just going to paste it like I did last time because that seemed to work really well. There we go. Save it. Okay, so what happens when I submit this form is I need it to make a post request so that my post mapping form can do something. And I'm going to say here, something happened. I'm going to refresh. So I'm at my local host, this is my IntelliJ app. I'm going to say mcdev. Wait, there we go. mcdev. Submit. Nothing happens, right? So what just happened was the form defaulted to a GET request. And because with GET requests, we cannot send data in the body of the request, the form created this query string we talked about a minute ago. And so now we need to update the form so that it instead makes a post request. So let's do that. I will Google it. I had the syntax up there earlier. Form how to make post HTML. Form method attribute. Here we can see method equals get, and I'm going to need it to say method equals post. So that's how we'll change the way it works. I don't need to pull this outside of here yet. I'm just going to say method equals, I can either do single quotes or I can escape double quotes, equals post. Okay, so I should have updated my form to now make post requests. Got to refresh it. I don't need any of this in there. Or actually, I missed some of it. Refresh the page. Dev. I don't need to select all those. I'm going to hit submit. Something happened. Right. So we made a post request. And we made a post to form. And we caught that post request with our method right here. Now what would happen if we didn't have that method? Let me just really quickly refresh, go back, refresh again. Submit. We have an error. We sent a post request method and it just totally didn't like that. So we need our method right here mapped to handle this post request. And so with that, let's look at the final section of the studio. So this part's interesting. We need to pull the data out of the post request. So we need to use at request param to update HTML. Okay. So this, I may write this in all inside of IntelliJ. I'm not going to use VS Code for this because it's kind of tightly coupled. So I'm going to say request param. It doesn't know what it is, so I'm going to do Alt-Enter to import it. If I ever need to, it can sometimes import the wrong thing. So I can just see right here, that looks right. Sometimes it's worth double checking what IntelliJ imported because it will mess you up every once in a while. So the name of the request parameter, let's start by calling this string, and the name of it matters. It's going to have to map to something we named something. So if I start off easy and I say, okay, we're gonna get the name value, then we're gonna call this string name. And just to prove that it's working, I'm gonna test it before I get too far in the weeds. Refresh, dev, exclamation mark, submit. Something happened, McDev. Cool. So it passed through that data and we captured it. And I made a statement that it needs to be named the same. That's an assumption. Let me just check that. And verify that it actually needs to map name for name, or if it's just going first one it receives. Yeah, so it actually does need to map name for name. Cool. Now, before I write the HTML, I'm just going to go ahead and do the request parameters for each value. Let me remember what I called them. We have spelled out fully. We have first favorite, second favorite, third favorite. So at request param, this is where it gets obnoxious because it's such a long string. We could probably break it out into multiple lines. String first favorite, paste, paste. Then we have second favorite, third favorite. All right, cool. Let's refresh on what the HTML needs to look like. That's pretty simple. It's the ordered list, just like we had originally. All right, an H1 and an ordered list. I don't need to do it here. So we will say H1. H1. I always like to close my HTML tags before I start filling them with content. And so in here we will say so we're throwing the name inside of there. Then underneath that we have a OL, which has a closing tag, so I'm going to write that next, OL. And then inside of there we have a line item, and we're going to have a couple of these, but let me just write the first one first. This is going to be first favorite, second favorite, third favorite. Cool, and I might indent these just because I feel like it's easier for me to read because I'm used to indentation with HTML. All right, I'm going to reload this. This should be a solution unless I messed something up. We'll do a quick recap and go for questions. So let's see here. I'm going to refresh at the form level. Well, I guess it submitted everything. Let's start here. Cool. Go to form. McDev. Then first favorite we'll call JavaScript, Python, Java. Submit it. Then it says McDev. There we have the conclusion. Excellent. So that was interesting. That was a really interesting studio. The one thing I will call out on this is that this is not how we will always do this. It's a bit painful to write HTML as a string in Java. So we're going to have some great tools later on called Timeleaf, and that it's going to make our life a little bit easier and provide more resources for doing stuff like this. So as a quick recap, we've got our request parameter method that is pulling things out of the body. actually do want to visualize that real quick here. So I'm going to go to the Inspector tab. I'm going to go to the Network portion of the Inspector tab. And I'm going to submit the form. And it creates this request here, which is buried because I got too much stuff here. So we have a post request that was made to this endpoint. And the payload is this. We have an object. Key value, key value. So we sent an object as part of the body of the request, not as part of a query string or anything like that. And so our Java code was able to pull out those values from that object and display it in the HTML that it returned. This right here was a bit of a pain to write. It's more of like an HTML exercise than anything at that point. We had the post method for the form, which made the form behave differently. On all of these, we have @response body, otherwise they don't do anything. And then the first one's pretty self-explanatory. So cool, that's going over the code. Now it's time for questions, thoughts, comments, anything up here. Yes? So down here, is there a way to do this where I don't have to have a request param for each value? That's the question. Yes, there is. My knowledge about this is a bit fuzzy. I believe it will come up later, but there are ways to. We're going to learn about something called a DTO, data transfer object. And so what will happen is there will be an object that we write in Java, and so that when we take an input, it will match the input to the object we wrote in Java, and if it matches, then we just take it all as an object. And so there will be a way in the future where we're not like hand jamming all of the values, but not quite just yet. But yeah, great question. Thank you. Other questions, comments? All right. That's it for studio review. Thank y'all. See you next class. Be safe driving home.